One takeaway that I try to remind our founders is that what you read in the news is the ridiculous corner case.
What are you really looking for? I think the first thing is that the founder really cares about the thing they're trying to do.
We're very excited about this chat. As we mentioned, there's a lot of excitement around going global from a startup's perspective, investors' perspective, and stuff like that. So we'll talk about some of those topics. But before we do that, let's talk about who you are. Tell us about yourself, your investment thesis. Why don't you start with Chris?
Hi folks, I am Chris Ye. So for those of you who actually know who I am, you probably know me because of my book Blitzscaling that I wrote with my friend Reid Hoffman. Sadly, I cannot bring copies of the book with me wherever I go. They're very heavy. Now, so I'm also here on stage because of venture capital. So I run a firm called Blitzskeling Ventures, which conveniently enough is based on the ideas of blitzscaling. So what we are looking for is we are looking for companies that are tackling a valuable winner-take-most market. That's a market where, due to things like network effects or the ability to have lock-in, once a company becomes the clear market leader in the field, they remain that market leader essentially forever, which makes them very valuable. So we're looking for companies that are going to have those kinds of dynamics. We specifically right now are working in terms of deep tech on our AI fund that focuses on emerging AI technologies. We did a number of investments in the agent space, and now we're looking into other things like robotics and trying to figure out what we're going to do next. We get to help innovators like the entrepreneurs in the audience build the future. So that's why we do it, and so glad to be here tonight.
My name is Simon Lancaster. I'm the founding GP of Омнивенчерс. I was asked this morning by an LP, why come to Korea? Well, I truly believe Korea is one of the leaders in manufacturing still of the world, and really excited to be here and talking with leaders in the space, corporates, LPs, fellow GPs. We are a deep tech fund, but we're kind of a niche deep tech fund within that. My quick 30-second journey of life to getting here. I was born and raised in Portugal. I studied at the University of Waterloo in Canada, engineering. I was the first mechanical engineering intern at Google. I actually went on to have an additional 12 years of research and development at Apple, where I filed over 50 patents. And I've also successfully scaled and exited startups, all prior to becoming a VC. And I'm really, thank you for inviting and excited to be here tonight.
My name is Sang Deok. I'm a co-founder of NXN Systems. We have investment from Kingsley Ventures. At NXN Systems, we believe the future of energy is not about producing more. It's about wasting less. Yes, wasting less. So how we do it, we consume flexibly. How we build it, we are combining mechanical energy storage and modal predictive control to timely consume energy when it is produced. So we are a team of multidisciplinary talents, from process engineer, mechanical engineer, chemical engineer, and data scientist, economist, and policymaker. So we are solving this problem through vertically challenging it. So excited to be here. Thank you.
I actually want to double click on some of the things that you mentioned, especially just in terms of investment thesis. Why AI? Why robotics? Why manufacturing, and why do you build what you build?
Why? That is a good question. And we are facing this because we are all participating and acting on our own behalf without cooperation or coordination. And building technology in AI can help facilitate cooperation and coordination in real time that humans cannot do. So I think this is a great time to tackle this question.
3 years ago, when I set out to build this firm, I wanted to build a hard tech firm. Realized that a lot of the giant VCs in the US are doubling down on very capital intensive hard tech manufacturing and industrials. But I found that there was a niche in the software or AI for industry space. We have been able to position ourselves such that we are the industry experts, and we get incredible founders, exited founders, as well as just founders that build really, really great scalable businesses leveraging AI. And they come to us first, and we want to be supporting of that industry.
When it comes to artificial intelligence, the reason it is so important and relevant is because it represents another revolution like the Industrial Revolution. Now, if you look at the history of mankind and civilization, if you look at per capita GDP, it is basically flat all the way until 1750. And Simon knows this because he's talked about this as well in terms of the Industrial Revolutions. And that's because we were held back by the tyranny of muscle power. If we wanted to do anything, we had to do it with our own muscles or with animal muscles. And then the Industrial Revolution allowed us to leverage steam and electricity, to use fossil fuels, and that's what produced a massive, multiple orders of magnitude increase in productivity and wealth. The AI revolution is similar, except it is freeing us from the tyranny of human brain power. We are able to use computing power to do many of the things that human brain power used to be required to do. And we will already see massive increases. And so that's why we want to invest in AI. And obviously, initially, a lot of this is happening with AI just working with the existing systems, human labor, and so on and so forth to do things in the real world. But I want you to picture what will happen when we can combine AI with robotics that allows us to do things less expensively, more quickly than ever before, where all of a sudden we're all living in that future that we've always wanted to live through. But that's going to require the addition of robotics to the current wave of AI.
Great, thank you. Chris and Simon, so one of the reasons I wanted to ask you was we don't get to hear about what's going on in Silicon Valley. Tell us about what's going on in Silicon Valley these days.
Not enough AI combined with hardware. That's one thing that's happening in Silicon Valley. So actually coming here and coming to Japan is enlightening. And a lot of people ask me, how can we compete? How can we become more like Silicon Valley? And my usual response is, don't try to become more like Silicon Valley. And I had this conversation actually earlier today with an LP that was asking me, why come to Korea or Asia to fundraise? And that is why. I think Korea, Japan, Taiwan, and this part of the world just have an incredible industrial manufacturing base. Yeah, one of my close friends just left one of the largest, most successful VC funds in Silicon Valley to start a consulting business just to help US robotics companies connect with Asian manufacturers so that they don't spend a year after they build their robot prototype to get to something that's actually manufacturable. Even though I'm a manufacturing guy and I live in Silicon Valley has no clue about how to manufacture anything, including robotics.
Simon actually shared one of the transactions, one of the deals you've done. There are a whole bunch of VCs and investors investing in manufacturing because it's the hot thing. They've never seen manufacturing facility. They've never been on the floor. So these are some of the things that's happening in Silicon Valley, which I think Korea can definitely help in tremendous ways.
The other thing that I would say is that I think what you just heard from Chris illustrates both the strengths and weaknesses of Silicon Valley. Silicon Valley has seized upon AI with a terrifying enthusiasm, which, again, I have been a part of, and I'm guilty of hyping it up just as much as anyone. But Silicon Valley has succeeded because it is willing to be more aggressive, to take that risk, to be the early adopter. Sometimes it doesn't work out. How many billions have people spent on NFTs and other things like that? So it definitely goes awry sometimes. But what makes Silicon Valley work is that desire to be a part of the new. But again, I don't think that you have to be Silicon Valley to succeed. I do think it's valuable for anybody who's interested to come and visit, to see what might inspire you, but to then take it back to your market and decide, well, I'm not just going to do it that way, because obviously this is a different market, but I can use some of those ideas.
I know this is probably not a fair question, but on behalf of entrepreneurs in Korea and Korean community, what do you think about Silicon Valley?
So Silicon Valley is not just a physical place, and it's about mindset, taking bold risks, and thinking globally from day one, and doing and challenging and building without overly constrained by bureaucracies or hierarchy or tradition. And that's like a final goal or benchmark we want to pursue as a Korean entrepreneur. Many Korean entrepreneurs want to go to Silicon Valley to prove oneself.
Try to be strategic about, there are other innovation hubs. If you decide to spend some time as it relates to technology development, customers are all over the place. Ohio actually has a lot of the big companies. Silicon Valley is not the only place for startups in the US. Probably move on to our topic about collaboration. And you already mentioned Korean manufacturing partners and whatnot. What specifically is that you're attracted to in terms of Korea that you don't see in other parts of the world?
Korea has a very strong foundation of industrial base and large customers that are also interested in venture. And I think these types of customers that are also aware and interested in venture actually today have a major advantage and can provide a major advantage to the startups. Because getting to a Series A now is very different from getting to a Series A in 2019 or 2020. Believe me, I raised $150 million with zero revenue during the ZERP era. That is no longer possible in most cases.
Sangba, from your perspective, what does AI mean anything in the energy sector?
You have mentioned about the industrial revolution, and I think this is a second largest or second great industrial revolution, and there is a great deal of a paradigm shift going on. And the previous paradigm we have witnessed is like a mechanically individualized systems. They are operating in locally optimal level. And we all combine local machines working at locally optimal levels. They are working in a suboptimal level globally or at a system level. And I think this is why the problems are piling up and we are facing the problems, the crisis we see. I think that is what's going on in energy market. Demand is not flexible. Demand is flexible only when they want to be. But the signals and everything is not passed through the system because all the machines are operating locally and we are trying to connect it and coordinate it. So that is a big deal for energy market because a lot of solar power energy is wasted because nobody's using it. During the noon, during the weekend, like 400 hours or 500 hours of solar energy is wasted in Europe and it is wasted in Korea as well. So we want to shift that demand, and it's the power of AI that could build this.
And there's actually periods where the power providers will pay you to use the utility in Europe, especially.
Right. Yeah.
And that's seems like a huge opportunity for arbitrage.
Yeah.
So one other area that I've been seeing come up more recently is what is the next generation of social media? Not in the sense of something that we use to hype things up and influence people, but in terms of something that's going to address the very real problems of loneliness, isolation, and the seeming madness that has gripped people all over the world. I think a lot of people pin the blame on the existing social media companies for bringing us to this state of affairs. I don't think we can look to the guys who own those two companies to solve these problems. So I think that we need to figure out collectively how we are going to build a next generation of social technology that is going to fix some of the problems that the last generation created.
We have both GPs and founders who sort of dream of going to Silicon Valley and then all of a sudden you become a unicorn and make, for lack of better terms, like a ton of money. How do you do that?
Where is this going?
How do you do that?
Well, there are two different ways to make a large ton of money. And the first is to create something that creates a ton of value for other people. It's always easier to harvest value if you've created it. That's one way, and I would argue it's probably the easier way, but it's not the one that gets the most attention. The other way is to get really, 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 really lucky.
One takeaway that I try to remind our founders is that what you read in the news is the ridiculous corner case. Like all the stars aligned, they had some connections. It's like not the reality. What you read in the news is not the reality, even in Silicon Valley, even with all the VC money in Silicon Valley. So pace yourself, plan and give yourself enough time, fundraise systematically. Don't rely on luck for fundraising. That's probably the number one mistake that most founders do, is they just give themselves not enough time. They think they're just going to raise in like weeks or months because that's what they saw in the news. And then, I don't know, for me, it's like focus on revenue. Like for every million that you raise, figure out how that's going to help you get closer to generating value, which is typically equates to revenue. Don't chase, the next fundraise and then the next fundraise.
I'm actually going to open it up to questions.
So you say before, don't chase next round, but as a runway getting shorter, so we feel pressure to launch first product and make some revenue. So my question is that how long are you willing to wait for a deep tech startup to make revenue? Or do you have any criteria whether they are doing good or good team?
It really depends how deep tech you are. Because deep tech right now is a spectrum. What are you building exactly? Is it software or?
It's an image editing software.
Image editing software. So in general, we would expect revenue by Series A. Like reoccurring revenue by Series A. Our baseline in 24, last year and this year, is $1 million ARR by Series A. And seed, we would expect you to have like some small revenue, POC revenue or initial customer traction or growth. There's a great book. It was basically the book I would have written. It's called Fundraising by Ryan Breslow. I highly recommend that book.
Thank you.
And blitzscaling, but it's on a different topic.
First one is, how do you know who is good founder, great founder? Second is, how to be the good founder.
People want smart, hardworking people with connections. That's great. But then if you go beyond that and say, well, what are you really looking for? I think the first thing is that the founder really cares about the thing they're trying to do. This is really hard, and I'm just going to tell this to all the entrepreneurs out there. When you start out to create a company, this is before you've ever raised any money, you probably have about a 1% chance of succeeding in a big way, because you probably got a long way to go even before you get to that Series A. And even after you've raised that Series A, you still probably only have about a 10% chance at succeeding. And that's just the numbers. Now, I'll add my own personal take on what I look for in a founder. And one of the things I say is, what I look for in a founder is the willingness to unlearn the lessons of their past success. And the reason is people love their past successes.
What are the top 3 priorities that startups must focus to succeed in the global market? And also, how can they manage or delegate other competing priorities?
The first thing is understanding this new market. Global markets are not the same. Every market is different. And without first understanding that market, it's very difficult to do anything. The next step after that is then being willing to modify the product or service to actually suit that market. One of the biggest mistakes that established companies make whenever they're expanding somewhere is they're like, here's our product, take it or leave it, we'll hire a local team, let them figure out how to sell it. How are you going to compete against the other players who actually have customized their product and tuned it for that market if you can't do that? And the last thing is figuring out a true go-to-market strategy. The brand that you have in your home market may not necessarily carry elsewhere. The channels that you use to succeed in your home market may not be the ones that are necessary in this new market. And so a big thing is the willingness to humble yourself and say, I'm going to start from scratch and learn about this new market. So have the humility to expand. I will add one last thing. One of the things I tell the startups that are looking to go global is, if you are looking to crack into a new market, whether it's the United States or somewhere else, one of your founders better be willing to go there. and actually live there, not just stay for 1 week a month. Because the only way they're going to embed themselves in that ecosystem and truly understand it is to be there.
I think that's great. I'm not sure what else I can add besides maybe like just take it at a paced amount. Don't go into consider that every market is different. So don't enter like 3 or 10 markets simultaneously without the resources, especially.
With that, we'll wrap up this session, and thank you again for today's talk. And thank you to Heidi,